Holt-Shannon. I am director and co-founder of New Hampshire Listens, and I'm here with my awesome colleague, Dr. Jess Carson, and I will let her say hello, and then we'll kick off our time together.
Thanks, Michele. I'm Jess Carson, a research assistant professor here at the Carsey School, also here with my awesome colleague, Michele Holt-Shannon.
So today is really, it's a quick look at some of the opportunities that we provide for students to help them think about where you really want to land, getting some experience across the spectrum of public policy and community development work. And so we'll talk a little bit about some of those opportunities and then open it up for questions or comments and just see what others have to say. I think for me, Jess, and I'm curious about you too, we've both had graduate students that have worked with us, undergrads who get involved in different parts of the work that we do. And I know I'm trying to, think like before I even knew what I wanted to do, it took sort of seeing other people doing things, especially in jobs that I never imagined. Like I didn't know there was a job like mine out there. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you dreamed of doing what you're doing now when you were, 5 years old. How did you come to recognize the passion for the work that you do, and also what were some of the experiences that you had, and then maybe connect that to some things that you're offering to students?
Yeah, that really resonates for me. I had no idea that it was an option to do a job like this. I had no idea. I'm a sociologist by training, and I remember coming into UNH where I was an undergrad and sitting in my first sociology class. I thought, I didn't even know this was a thing, that you could study this. And it just it hit me really hard that it was so cool and it was so just right for me. But until I was exposed, I had no idea it was a thing. And then as I went through grad school and continued with sociology, which I loved, the only sort of picture I had in my head was an academic job where I was a tenured track professor in a classroom, because those were the other sociologists that I knew. And so becoming exposed to Carsey as a grad student was what opened the idea to me, that there were other kinds of ways that you could apply a skill set like this, and other places to work other than just in the classroom, that you could bring that outside somewhere else. How about you? How does a person even sort of come into your pathway and land a job?
Well, I mean, really, in my early career, it was all in higher ed, and it was all kind of working with students. There was always some part of the job that was about controversy, and then fostering dialogue with students. So that's where I sort of got bit by the bug around one of the things that I'll say is just that yes, talk is action is where we want to see action, but show me action that doesn't come from people talking to each other. And the more productive that kind of conversation can be, the better. And so I definitely got into that. And I'll say a couple of things. New Hampshire Listens has always has an ongoing sort of opportunities for some online facilitator training. We do these lunchbox meetings where people talk about something really specific, some like hosting a candidate conversation in a community, things where you opportunities where you get tips if you're going to do something locally. But we also we always have so many projects going on in schools, municipalities, with research teams, just such a range of topics that I've really enjoyed when undergrad and graduate students will say, hey, I'm interested in climate change, or I'm interested in water, or I'm interested in racial equity. What can I do to be involved? And so we've just been working on making it easier for students to join us, even if they're not in a fellowship with us for a year. And I'll say one last thing about that, and then I'm curious about specifically your work with undergrads versus graduate students. One of the first things we do, besides, like, if we identify a project that someone's interested in, Antonio right now is interested in housing, right? So he's going to do some housing work with us. And so I just throw calendar holds, on his calendar, and if he accepts them, I'm like, great, Antonio can make it, and if he doesn't, it's just one he can't make. We have a social work intern working with us now, and we're essentially bombarding her with calendar holds, and she can go with us to Manchester and Exeter and Peterborough or wherever we're going to be. And in the beginning, it's just observing, but pretty quickly we invite the students with us to jump in and be a part of the team.
I was going to ask you that, Michele, like, what would you say to students who are thinking, that sounds cool, but like, I don't know how to do that, or I don't have like a facilitating skill. Like, how do you sort of bring them along with you in that pipeline?
I mean, it's one of those things that it just takes practice. It's nice to do some of the foundational, workshops and trainings, which we would, encourage people to do. There's classes at UNH, if you're an undergrad, there's some great classes in the communication department, that actually where you get to practice and kind of strengthen your skills. But sometimes it's just like, just come out with us and watch, and then ask questions about what you just saw. And then you can practice, and it feels a little more grounded because you've seen it, kind of happen. I mean, everybody's been in a meeting, but community conversation and dialogue is facilitated a little bit differently.
Yeah.
Do you end up working with both undergrads and graduate students?
Yeah, so often the undergrads that I work with are students who come to me, looking for hourly employment. They heard there was a job here, or they know somebody who worked, hourly for me, and it was a decent gig. And so often that's just kind of the exposure path. Like, okay, you want to see what research in action looks like. Sometimes it looks like data entry in a spreadsheet. Sometimes it looks like, organizing stuff for a lit review. And it's just sort of getting folks exposed to, like, what does it look like to see research in action? And then they can, similar to you, it sounds like, kind of build up their questions from there. They don't even often know what to ask, like where to start, until they just kind of get into it and start seeing what it looks like in action. And then with the grad students, those are often students who have either specific skill sets that they want to build. Antonio, one of our examples, he was looking to build a little bit of data skills and, data work skills. And so we have some activities that he's working on. He's helped with some data that we got from the state around food stamp enrollment, and he's helped us put that together and pull it into a usable format. And we're able to share it with, nonprofit partners who are then taking it back to the state and using that to help inform how they go about supporting people who are eligible for food stamp enrollment and don't know it. And so, Antonio started doing data entry, but like the pathway to, moving that into real policy is there. And, the work that he just did with me matters for, lots of people in the state. And those specific skill set building activities, sometimes it's around topic, somebody's interested in early childhood education, or somebody's interested in food security, and they come in those pathways. And sometimes it's around a skill, like I need to figure out better how to manage Excel data, or to practice my, my statistical package that I know I'm going to need down the pipe. And really about kind of getting them in and getting their hands dirty.
You must have worked with a range of, like from the math whiz to the not math whiz. Yeah, I mean, is there, I don't know, have you experienced how people kind of come to understand their own research interests? And even the type of research that they are interested in being a part of?
Definitely. I mean, it's a really neat time, I think, for a lot of social science research, because we're coming to understand that there are different ways of doing research and of understanding. And actually, a lot of that is really relevant for the ways that our teams have come together and the ways that we've begun working together. There are some really like special skills and contributions that your staff and faculty on your team have that are just not traditional research skills, but are so valuable in really understanding people's experiences. And so those kind of ways of knowing different things and of garnering different sets of information, that's a really kind of broad field right now, which is really fun. And as folks come in and they start to sort of get their feet under them, they may work on a project and be like, this really wasn't for me. You know, I really don't want to do this again. Or sometimes they work on something and think like, I didn't know I had a knack for that. I didn't realize I would be good at that. And they are, like you said, from all different disciplines. I had a Homeland Security student who worked with me for, you know, a long time on a couple of projects and turned out to have a real knack for data entry. And she achieved like industry standard. And now with her Homeland Security degree, she's looking for a data entry job. And, you know, I've had folks who have really become connected to the work and gone on to do social work as a career or sociology as a career. And I think it really depends on who the student is and what interests and skills they come in with, and just trying to figure out how we can kind of support them in that. We have such a big Carsey network and such a lot of, you know, friends of Carsey who are either here on campus or off campus, that it's nice to be able to find the right fit for somebody who comes in the door as a student.
Yeah, I mean, you're reminding me of a lot of the, just when I hear public service, public administration, community development, like there's so much public policy. I mean, there's just so much involved in that. And I think about, you know, the choices that people will have in terms of working in a local community, or, you know, working in state government, for example. We've done a couple of projects where we had the opportunity to bring people together across the state who were working on something specific. So one example was around childhood lead poisoning. And often the people, you know, unless you're in a big city with like a public health department, you might be the only person in your town, you know, who has lead poisoning on your, you know, on your plate. Mm-hmm. And so when we, you know, did a call for folks to kind of put together lead action teams and then spend some time together in these learning exchanges, and they would hear from other folks like what they were doing in their town to address lead poisoning, which is one of those things like we've known for 100 years or more, you know, more than 100 years, mm-hmm. how bad it is. Mm-hmm. We recently passed, you know, policy, I'm blanking on the main partner, the Conservation Law mm-hmm. Foundation did a lot of work to change policy in New Hampshire, and then it was just sort of up to people to start testing water in schools, and, you know, things that weren't happening before. Mm-hmm. You know, testing young children. Anyway, I thought of that one as just an example of how people can get isolated in their own area in public service, but then the opportunities to come together and solve a problem. Mm-hmm. If you've been a part of something like that, maybe you're more likely to help initiate something like that in the future in your work.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the lead project, because I think it's just a good illustration of, you know, I know you say New Hampshire Listens is issue agnostic, I think is, you know, how you phrase it. And that's just something so unexpected that you maybe wouldn't expect New Hampshire Listens to work on, but that there are so many opportunities to kind of apply the skills and expertise in your team to all kinds of different settings. And I wonder if there's a couple others that you might want to mention, just to sort of show like just how very issue agnostic it can be sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure I could name a whole lot of things that we haven't had some, you know, topic in. You know, we've worked with a few governor's commissions on like water sustainability, education funding, gambling and gaming in the state, one really wonky one on like government efficiency, a governor's commission on that. Two, often we're called by schools if they've, it's nice to be called in a proactive way, but sometimes we're also called in a reactive way when there's been a critical incident, whether it's racism or some kind of controversy, and just helping communities navigate that, because sadly right now people will just kind of it'll really blow up on, people will call us and say it's blown up on Facebook and nobody's talking to each other, and can you help us talk to each other again? And it's one of those situations where when that kind of controversy is happening, especially with the social media, it can get out of control really fast. And if neighbors, these are neighbors, if neighbors can like get in the room together, it can be so much more productive, even in a Zoom room. So,
in a Zoom room.
We've been doing the online certainly more, and people are able to reach access things in different ways. So it's been nice to do some of that online as well. So those are some of the topics. Right now, about a quarter of our work is in schools. We're hoping to do more in terms of local civic health and how that relates to public health and health equity. Mm-hmm. They really can't be separated. A lot of folks would say, but they feel like things that we talk about all the time and that we don't get traction on. And I think those are some of my favorite projects right now.
Yeah, I love that breadth of work that you've done in different areas, because I think it illustrates to students, especially who might be interested in the idea that there are a lot of ways that the skills that New Hampshire Listens has and fosters in students are very portable, depending, they can cross all kinds of boundaries, all kinds of topic areas, and could really be, useful to them no matter what segment of public administration or public policy or community development that they land in. That kind of New Hampshire Listens approach can kind of feed their work in those areas.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. Definitely true. It's hard to think of a job where you don't have to have a meeting or work with other people to solve a problem. And so that's definitely helpful. What's some of your favorite ways to involve your graduate students?
I really love getting them involved in all parts of the data process. So, I'm a data queen. I love data, and I love getting it, capturing it, analyzing it, designing ways to get it. And so from, data collection, we do a lot of qualitative data collection where we interview folks one-on-one. We have a couple of open projects right now around interviewing childcare providers and trying to better understand what their needs are post-pandemic. As COVID relief money is drying up, what's next for them, and what are they facing as that last kind of lifeline to a really struggling sector kind of closes down. And so, talking and having those conversations and trying to bring that information back with us into a policy setting or practice setting that can help kind of move the legislation or move the administrative policy along on that front. We're interviewing realtors who have sold a lot of houses in the northern forest region of New Hampshire, Maine, Vermont, and New York right now, and trying to better understand, we don't yet have great documentation of this supposed phenomenon of, folks fleeing from the big cities in response to COVID and settling in rural places. And, what have the realtors seen? What are their impressions? And, it's not just COVID relevant, but then what does that tell us about what might be coming as people are deciding where to move, in response to climate change, in response to the wave of baby boomer retirements? How are people choosing a community to land in, and what does that mean for that community that's really attractive to new people? And what does that mean for the folks who were already there? And, how do we sort of make that work for people? And getting students involved in, both the interviews, but also the building of a big, messy, quantitative data set that has data from the Postal Service and the Census Bureau and the real estate sector, and kind of getting it all in one place together. It's a fun, really great data challenge with lots of places for students to kind of chip in and feel like they own a piece of that data and help kind of see it through the process. And Antonio has been a part of that. Again, he's been a busy person this semester and helping with that too. So yeah, it's fun.
That's
no matter
great.
where you are in the process.
Yeah, I mean, you smile when you talk about big data sets, and we smile when we're like, we designed this, interactive day, and it was fun. Do you think there's any misunderstandings about your work, or typical kind of misunderstanding? And I'm asking, and maybe I'm about to answer it for you, because when you were talking, I was like, I think people don't understand how much you're also out talking to people and grounding the stories, grounding the data in stories.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think people think I'm a math person. I think that, or that you have to be a math person to do data. And despite the fact that I teach our quantitative methods class, I am our public policy stats teacher here at Carsey. I am not a math person. I'm a more social sciences person. And so the data are just a way to help me understand what the story is. And they're just, a way of getting there and of triangulating the stories that we hear other places and helping, serve as a roadmap to make sense of what's happening in the social world. That's what it's all about for me.
Well, I think that is actually a great sort of point that ties it both together, which is, there's always a story, multiple stories, in a community, in a school, among groups of people, different demographic groups, people who live in the same place. Like, there's always a story that goes along with what the data is telling us, what people are, mad about, what people feel like has been accomplished. And I think that's one of the things that we hopefully are giving students and co-creating with students, is that opportunity to make those connections between data, stories, people, community, and public policy.
It's the thread that pulls us all together, I guess. That's great, Michele.
Yeah.
I guess one thing maybe we should include is how would a student go about getting involved with New Hampshire Listens work? If somebody was really interested to work with you, how would they take that first step?
Come in and talk to us. Reach out to me or Mo or Carrie or Michele, and if you go to Mo and Carrie's office, there's a big board on the wall that everywhere where we're working. We've got a list of places where we are going to work, and a lot of topics. And so it's just a good idea just to check in with us, tell us what you're interested in. Or we also have people who say, I really don't know what I want to do, but I am interested in sort of macro community work, and can I tag along on a bunch of different things? And we also work that out too. How about with you?
Same, yeah. Reach out, or if you see something that's interesting to you in, the research pipeline, if it pops in your inbox, or if you heard about it, or if you know someone who's worked with it, just, let us know what catches your eye and check in. And if there's a way to slot students into the work we're doing and to bring them along with us, we love that. It's great to be able to build those relationships. And it's not just for grads. I love having a great undergrad who maybe wants to come dig in for a while and test the waters. I think that's a really nice way for them to kind of get their feet under themselves when it comes to building a path forward through school and beyond. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, it looks like we don't have any questions in chat, but it was great talking with you.
It's been a treat, Michele.
And students who are listening to this, reach out. We look forward to working with you and bringing you out into the work.
Absolutely. Thanks, Michele. Thanks for taking time.
Thanks, Jess.